Two Embers, it's here, Two Embers. Let's get this hype train on the road. So, if you don't know, Two Embers is a Sky animated series produced by that game company. Basically, it explores the previous history of the Sky world, and I cannot explain how excited I am for this show. Two Embers has quite a lot of detail behind it. We know that it's produced by Genova Chen, the lead guy in Sky, so there's a very, very similar design style, and even the animation style and the character models are very faithful to what you'd see in the canon of the Sky game. And it's here. I mean, it's going to be there next season. I imagine that the show itself, if you don't know, the show itself, which is 10 episodes long, around 15 minutes per episode. And there's also 2 tie-in seasons, if you can believe that, relating to and it's not tie-in as in collab. I think what it means that Two Embers is really like a whole history of the Sky. It's very holistic, because there's this giant, massive history. So I really think it's basically just going to be a base game, a lot of the base game lore, like the Eden King and the Elders and all that. So, it's here. I imagine that beta testing will start sometime in February, and we'll probably see more teasers in March, and we'll probably release fully around April. At least the first few episodes of the Two Embers. And the funny thing is that we already know quite a lot of what Two Embers is going to be about, because it's just a retelling or a reimagining of the same lore we've known from concept art and the general idea of the Sky world. For example, I can imagine that there's going to be a very similar story of the Eden King from the Eden King video I have. You should check out all my lore videos, because I probably want to make it updated after Two Embers comes out, but it seems that the story of the king is probably unchanged from what we've seen. For example, we see the child, obviously the small, short-headed child in the Switch trailer and all that, and this child goes to Isle of Dawn, they meet the parents, and they have this whole journey across the Sky world. They become the king, and they mess everything up by creating the Eden Diamond. That's basically the whole story, but there is actually a new element to the Sky that's interesting. There's the other kid, the Manatee kid, who has a hairstyle very, very similar to what we see in the Hopeful Steward. So I think it's basically confirmed, not exactly, but it's basically there that this new kid, who we call the Dusk Ember, is actually the Hopeful Steward. And we see some stuff here. For example, let me pull it up. There's an article here that says that it's going to be no dialogue, there's going to be narration, which is very interesting, because obviously it's not going to be people speaking. I think that won't fit in Sky, but narration will make it a lot more easy to understand. And then it says here that they started working on it 2 years ago, and it's an interview from 2023. So that means they started working it 2021. Now, that's a crazy timeline, because I don't think there's any project that TGC has done that's lasted from 2021 all the way to 2025. That's 4 years of preparation. So I really think, they say here, it's Pixar quality, and I think it's really interesting. And we see here, there's the general, plot of it, and it says here, it tells the story of 2 children and the drama about the 2 of them trying to help people. One of them, the king, seeks power to change the world, but in the process he's corrupted and destroyed. The other one, Hopeful Steward, tries to save the world by convincing the former world to give up its power. And I think that's going to be the big conceit. And there's another article, in fact, by Men's Journal, which is a bit funny. And it's interesting because this guy, this random interviewer in the Men's Journal, actually got a sneak peek in the Two Embers, if you can see here. Yeah, somehow, this random interview journalist guy got access to Two Embers, which really makes me think we're on the verge of it being released soon. And we see here, he likes it a lot, obviously, but it's interesting because he said they don't really have a place to put it. And in my opinion, there's only one clear, obvious answer, and that's YouTube. Like, Netflix and all the other streaming services are paid. They are subject to a lot of rigorous testing and a lot of, especially with animation, like, there's so many projects getting cancelled. It's not reliable, and it's not international either. So I think posting it to YouTube could actually be a very, very easy alternative for them to do Two Embers with. One, it's international, you don't have to worry about the regional locks. And two, you can get the most amount of views and publicity and viralness, basically. And three, you can market it as like a regular old animation series that isn't even related to Sky. So one thing that's interesting is that Two Embers is probably going to bring in a lot of new mods and a lot of new players, because they're going to see this and they're like, wow, what is this whole fun? Then they realize it's based on a game. So it's like, if you know Arcane, then it's probably going to be a similar effect where Arcane made people watch League of Legends. We could see Two Embers do the same and convince people to play Sky. And it's a funny thought, it's a headcanon, that the manatee doesn't exist in the main game. We don't see the Hopeful Steward's personal manatee in the main game. And already we can see in some of the trailers that the Hopeful Steward's manatee is a bit injured and all that. So it's very, very likely that they're going to have a dramatic moment where the manatee dies, or in a tragic, corrupted into darkness, or somehow Hopeful Steward loses a companion in some way. And it's very funny. It's like free tears, free emotional moment. But that's what happens when you have an animal companion, really. There's also the king. Now, I think that the two stories are going to be related, and I think the big one is probably going to be that both Hopeful Steward and the king are both Sky Kids. And that's the one thing that gives them that connection. So maybe sometime later on in the series, Hopeful Steward learns that the king is also a Sky Kid, and maybe they can be saved like that. So they wander across, go back to Eden, and try to confront the kids, saying, oh, we can be Sky Kids, we can save the world, don't do all this. And based on what we know of Eden and the king is probably going to refuse that and go on with his plans and destroy everything. It's really weird about it, like, we already know the fate of everything, we already know what's going to happen to most of these characters. So in some ways, it's positioned more like a tragedy, because we already know the fate, so we just have to look on in horror, basically, as we see this prequel dealing with the story moments. And I think it's going to be really interesting, honestly. I'm hyped for Two Embers, and I really hope they bring more content like this to not only just bring new players, but also allow for old players to get into lore more. So yeah, that's my opinion. My best guess, first week of April 4th, let's say. That's probably going to release the trailer for Two Embers, and they're going to release it a few weeks later. I think it's going to be a staggered release, like one episode every few days, I guess. And I predict it's going to be decently popular, I hope. Let's hope that TTC has good marketing, because I really want the show to do well and to introduce a lot more people into the Sky world.